Uh, 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 uh. Yo, that's one of those tracks, man. Yeah, I get down with that track, man. That track's nice, man. That's like a fusion between jazz, a little bit of funk. Definitely got that hip hop drag. Yo.
And a lot of reggae.
Reggae, roots, I wrote the yard. Hey, we're at the Wash, Pasadena. And when you know him in Pasadena, you know him in the sea. Remember, Shava? Me come around, me come around, me down. Danny Boy is done, Danny Boy's here, and you better fear. Fear Danny Boy. Oh, the fear Danny Boy, a bomber clad, hot beer.
Wow.
Heineken. That was horrible.
Wow.
Danny Boy is in the house, yo, Danny, yo. Shout out to your peoples out there. Shout 'em.
What's good, everybody? What's good? Coming live from Dina. As always, SGV, Lord willing, this will be another smooth podcast.
Hey, it almost didn't happen. I'm coming down here, and man, people are crazy. Somebody actually stopped on the 110. Stopped on the 110, and like, why is this traffic not moving? All of a sudden, almost rear-ended somebody, and it was almost horrible. Rear-ended. I can say the word rear-ended. It's a hard word to say, but yeah, man, almost made it make it. Then we got here, but we're here.
Yeah, I had to come and find you, homie. I had to come and find you. Like, yo, I'm over here, like, in Lot I. The Rose Bowl is right behind me. I'm like, post up, player.
Yeah, I was like, I had to put out an Amber Alert for myself. Like, 6'2", sort of mean looking, pompadour.
Beige Rage.
Beige Rage.
You gotta watch out for the light skin cats.
Me come back around me on Kingston King machete everyone. Bomber clap me machete everyone. Yo, burning tire everyone.
Hey, that is one thing about y'all Caribbeans. Y'all will cut and get a minute. You know what I mean?
Come to the yo, it's just about the show. Here's what it is, man. It's like it's just that rage, man. I don't know if it's the heat. I don't know if it's the Spanish, because the Spanish were very passionate. You had the Portuguese, you had the Spanish. We're talking about like the particular human. People who procured human cargo and human talent for free back in the day. So the Spanish were very passionate. As a matter of fact, they used to tell the women who used to work on the Spanish plantations in the Caribbean not to make eye contact with the Spanish soldiers because they would rape them.
Wow.
They would think that you're coming on to them, so they always had to bow their head down, and that's how the Spanish got down. And they got down like that in the Caribbean and the Philippines.
Wow.
Yeah, don't forget, they took the Philippines too. Yeah, hey, Filipinos are descendants of slaves themselves. Just different kind of slaves. Negrito in the mountains.
Yeah. That's funny, because I think the same is true for even in Cambodia, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the darker ones were always up in the mountains, up in the hills. Yeah.
The Philippines actually has black people.
Oh, yeah.
That live up in the mountains, negritos.
The negrito.
Negritos, and it's not like they're actually like southeastern blacks,
man,
up in the mountains of the Philippines. Filipinos will never tell you that. You have to mention it to them.
You really do, and it's one of those things too. Like, if you corner them on it, you actually like inform them, like, yo, this is what it is. They can't really deny it, and a lot of times they won't. Again, like you said, very few of them are going to actually volunteer that info, but if anyone who is anti-willful ignorance nowadays, to be ignorant and not know is really on some like willful, like you almost have to ignore knowledge at this day and age to remain ignorant, you know, where you just don't know certain things or, you know, whatever.
Willful ignorance is very faddish right now. And a lot of people are accepting willful ignorance over truth, over logic, over facts. I mean, they just are there. People are being willfully ignorant. It's like, okay, that's why history is such a sort of a tepid subject, because everybody chooses their perspective they want to see on history.
Yeah.
For example, if we even go down to the Confederate statues, okay, the Confederate statues, it's so deep on all sides, but yet really not that deep, because then you see the willful. I don't know why I'm bad with W's today. You see the willful execution of ignorance, because number one, most of those statues were put up in the 30s, and they weren't put up. They were put up to counter the civil rights movement. So if you're going to put up a statue of a general, I would think you'd put it up in the 1800s when that general died. But if you're putting it up in the 1930 or 1940, or you're putting it up in the 60s, to parallel the civil rights movement, all you're doing is passively aggressively saying, we don't agree with the civil rights movement. That's basically what you're saying. And you're putting up these statues to remind you of who you are. And that's the willful ignorance, because the willful ignorance is you took second place.
Right.
You lost.
Right.
For example, the Miami Heat are not up there building statues for their second place team.
Right.
If you were south of the Mason-Dixon line, you took that L. You get no statues for L. If you're putting a statue up, basically you're putting it up for racial propaganda.
Yeah. But you know what?
Hey, go ahead and grab the mic, man. What are you? Oh, my Brian Gumble. What's wrong? I keep trying to hint to you, man. Take this microphone, man.
Right. To piggyback off of what you was just saying, it's like the Seminoles, my understanding of that was that this tribe, they weren't really about being passive, and so they stood up at a point where the majority or the white folks in the South, they had to endure slaughter, and they wound up naming a lot of the counties and cities and other areas in the Florida area after these slaughtered generals and what have you. So like Dade County or whatever out in the Florida area, or like Jacksonville. Jackson was he was military in the Confederate Army. Got slaughtered, but then he got honored, in the so I mean, it's along the same lines of what you were alluding to, is even in the defeat, they wind up honoring the what I would call honoring the bullshit. But that lends to the whole thing of, like we had spoken earlier, like willful ignorance. So a lot of the people that fly this Confederate flag or whatever on some, just staunch, what they would denote as, patriotism. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
The red, white, and blue. But here's what's so funny. You take somebody like the average, so-called African American, which I can't stand that as a title.
Let's sidebar. Sidebar real quick. Let's talk about African American. We'll jump back to your point. Remember your point?
Yes,
African American was a term coined by, do you know who? I don't mean to put you on do you take a guess?
I'm going to say, from my understanding, that would be Brother Jesse. Right?
Yes. Jesse Jackson, Rainbow Coalition.
I am
somebody. He was somebody, and he was the person that they said, hey, what should we call black people? Negro's not working. Black is not working. So instead of Jesse Jackson, which, there is controversy about Jesse Jackson. I don't care about what people think. There was the execution of Martin Luther King. There was the people with the ties and without the ties. You do the research yourself. After Martin Luther King was taken down, Jesse Jackson, leader of the Rainbow Coalition, became the quote-unquote, official leader of black people in the United States.
Well, I would say he was the unofficial, just from the angle of, I don't think black folks actually have just one so-called leader. I think for us, there's... it comes in, little bits and pieces here and there. But Jesse was responsible, I think, for that so-called title, which is definitely a misnomer. Because if you do the research through your own family, if you're, so-called African American, and you ask your grandma what her grandma informed her about the bloodline, the vast majority of us will always come back to some quote-unquote Native American of some kind.
That's what's catching steam right now, and that's what a lot more people are doing research on that. The Native American, that there were actually black people
already here
that were indigenous to America.
Already here.
What they say is that the Native Americans that are portrayed on TV are more of the Asian land bridge, but they were already indigenous black people here, just like Australia, and they weren't African. Well, everybody's African. Even Irish people are African. Everybody came from Africa.
You believe that?
I believe everybody came from everybody came from the Mesopotamia area. Now, remember we had Pangea, where all the continents came together.
Pangea, yeah.
Pangea, all the continents were together. So remember, all the continents broke apart. In my opinion, all life started in one place, and it was Mesopotamia. I still, every time they try to prove the Bible wrong, some facts come out that it's actually right. It's just it's not on a level that the human mind can understand.
Oh, most definitely.
It's on a different, because it's just I could break down something that I heard one time. Maybe I'll do it later on. I read it, and it's the only far-fetched thing about this guy, he called a self-proclaimed prophet, who says about the he actually said that Adam was created by angels. He said God created the angels, and the angels created. And he went back to a part in the Old Testament and pointed out where the sons of man, which were the angels, created Adam. But I don't give much credence to that, because he talked about possession, and there's nothing that God. Okay, he talked about being possessed by the Holy Spirit. God doesn't have to possess you. He doesn't have to. Right. A demon possesses. God doesn't have to possess you. God is way bigger than you. He doesn't have to possess you. He that's free will.
Right.
and possession do not go together.
Right.
Okay. Possession is an invasion.
Right.
Through a crack, through trauma.
Right.
God don't have to invade you. He's going to give you a choice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If God could come in and believe me, he would, and I don't think we'd like it because when he comes, God doesn't play. So
Right.
But okay. With my personal opinion, I believe that there was an intercession somewhere. Because they say we evolved from monkeys, then we'd be monkeys still. Because monkeys were still around, okay?
Right.
So, but we don't resemble any of the things. So they said there had to be something that combined different species to create the human species. There had to be something that...
Now, who's saying this?
This is just what I've heard.
Okay.
This is what I've heard. This is stuff that I've looked up.
Is this from a so-called science angle, or is this from a popular belief angle amongst like a certain group, or
I think a population. I mean, I think between most people, most people think that we evolved from monkeys.
And where did they get that from?
They got it from science.
And we got that where? In school?
In school.
Right.
Which is we're inundated with all this false information, and that's one, because there's no possible way that we evolved from monkeys. When they say that we actually have the DNA of pigs and rats in us as well, you know. But they say different groups do. Everybody doesn't have the pig, but there is pig DNA in certain ethnicities.
Right.
I won't get too deep into it because I don't want to rock the boat, but there's definitely not monkey DNA.
No.
You know, but go ahead, expound more on that. Tell me your angle on it, because I believe that I'm glad you put me on the spot with that, because I really didn't know what I believed, because I'm still sort of compiling the information. I mean, honestly, I don't have a total answer for you, because I'm still hearing all these different angles. Yes, popular conceptions from maybe a scientist I heard on Joe Rogan, or maybe somebody I heard, from a YouTube video, from a school, from my own, sort of just figuring it out. You don't need somebody with a PhD to help us figure everything out.
Right.
A PhD just means you went to a prestigious university, you paid the money, and you did what you had to do, but that doesn't make them smarter. It doesn't make them better. That just makes they studied for a goal.
Right off the bat, there's a difference between being educated and then being, I guess, what would be considered wise. It's two completely different things.
Completely.
Not
in the same ballpark.
You can be knowledgeable, know a bunch of things, but I think when it all boils down to it, the difference between wisdom and I think knowledge is you can know a lot of things or be inundated, or some would even say indoctrinated with school. Yeah, I mean, look at the process. I mean, think about this. In some instances, if we really break it down, teachers are exposed to some children more than the parents are throughout the week.
Oh, a lot more.
Right.
And the teenagers too. And teenagers don't even like to talk to their parents, but they talk to a teacher.
Right. And so therein lies, the avenue where, information, it can be poured in, and it doesn't necessarily have to be correct information, just information. So, to answer you, it's like when you break down someone being what we would call intelligent or smart or whatever, that would all depend upon what the actual conversation is about, or
well, it's very subjective.
Right, exactly.
It's subjective.
Exactly.
When it should be objective.
It really should be.
It should be objective.
Yeah. So, but knowledge is knowing a lot of things. Like you can regurgitate what you've been told, or sort of like what's homeboy's name again? Cliff Craven from Clavin from
Cheers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Well, you know they say that blah blah blah, and he's